perspectives, we're here to inspect it. I'm a small, not a medium. Let us escape from this tedium.
Hi guys, and welcome back to Paranormal Perspectives. My name's Stan, and as always I have my co-host Christine with me.
Yeah.
And tonight continuing our conversations with everyday people like myself, basically, who've experienced things firsthand. Also, we've been speaking to investigators, people who kind of live and breathe this, people from all walks of life, just simply telling their firsthand accounts of things they've experienced and simply normalizing the conversation about the paranormal and exploring the unknown, basically. So tonight we have Phil with us. Thank you, Phil, for being here. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is going to be a great conversation. I know that you have like a long-standing story, and this has been an interesting one to kind of get into, really. So without spoiling it too early on, I'd like to just start the conversation by you simply introducing yourself. Tell us a little about yourself. You know, where do you live? What interests you? What excites you? Who is Phil, basically?
Yeah, well, my name's Phil. I'm a paranormal investigator. Have been for nearly 25 years now, at least. Started way back in early 2000s. So it's actually probably even longer, actually. Got into it because of the experiences really that I had as a child, and also more so actually than the experience that my mother had that then sort of like carried on. So yeah, I'm a bit of a metal detector enthusiast, and also do this new magnetic fishing thing that you see on TikTok sometimes. So, and I've got other various, I do a little bit of crafting and stuff like that. So, and I work full time as well. So yeah, I keep myself busy, and I'm also married as well. So
it seems like this is something you've really been into kind of longer than me, really, because I've been unknowingly thrust into the paranormal when I was very young. Almost wanted to ignore it, kind of regretted my experience because I experienced something quite frightening, quite frankly, and took me many years to accept it. And now I've accepted it. I kind of embrace it, and now I get excited by it. I've been on a couple of ghost investigations, and that's where I'm at the most relaxed, bizarrely. I'm fascinated by what's going on and trying to experience things firsthand. So I can understand the excitement that you feel when you kind of go through these things. But yeah, so basically, we'd like to just you to tell your story, basically. Like, I know you have something quite interesting to say. Like, please just tell us in your own words, your story, and we're going to just go from there.
Basically, it's easy for me to really start from the first, not experience, but the first story that I was told by my mother, who's now passed away, sadly. Back in the 1940s, she lived with my two uncles and my mother, and obviously my grandmother and my grandfather. And they lived in a small village in Buckinghamshire, and they lived down like this. You know, you see these old spooky lanes, don't you? So they lived down one of these long lanes, and at the bottom of the lane was an old Edwardian house, and attached to the house were some worker cottages. It was part of the manor of the village at the time, and the manor was basically the whole village. So if you can imagine, there was 3 cottages, and 2 of those cottages, before my grandparents moved there, burnt down, and there was the only single cottage left, which my grandparents then rented from the manor. Now, my grandparents didn't work for the manor. My grandfather worked making the propeller blades for the Spitfires. So he had to balance them. He always told me they used to put a feather on one end and a feather on the end, and if they balanced, they were perfect. If they didn't, then they had to melt them down. But I know back that they used to use metal propeller blades, wooden ones first, not metal ones. Anyway, that's digressing. Anyway, so the story goes, one night, my grandfather was at work. So my mum tells me, and they were in this cottage. Now, if you can imagine the cottage is just a simple 2, 1 up, 1 down. So 1 room downstairs and 1 large bedroom upstairs, which was connected by a stairs that was on the back wall of the house, with a door at the bottom and a door at the top, so in between, basically just so it wasn't so drafty, I suppose. So my mum told me this story which really sort of shocked me really. And so they were listening to the radio, the wireless, she called it back then. It was quite a windy night, probably a little bit stormy. She said, you can set in the scene here really for like a typical horror story or a ghost story. At the time, my grandmother was hard of hearing until she had an operation many years later to correct her hearing. So her hearing wasn't great. So they were all listening to the radio, and because my grandmother was quite hard of hearing, she was closest to the radio on the table. So they used to have it on the big wooden table in the middle of the room. And they were all listening to the radio. And then suddenly from upstairs, my mother told me, and her two brothers at the time, heard like a massive bang on the floor. And they thought maybe something had fell over in the bedroom, like a lamp or something had fell over. And they all looked up, except my grandmother, because she was hard near and she was listening to the radio. She didn't hear what was going on. And after the bang, there come like another bang. She said, and this bang was almost like the house literally shook in its foundations. And my grandmother looked at my mum and my two uncles, Jack and Jim, and they were pointing up like that. And she was going like this, and she didn't really take much notice of them, and she just sort of carried on listening to the radio. After the bang, literally a minute later, they heard something or someone being dragging across the floor up in the bedroom. She said it was almost like someone was dragging something, it was wood on wood. So it was almost like someone was dragging a leg, because you could hear a stomp and a stomp and a like that. So it was like a one person. It was definitely one person. They were dragging something. Either they were dragging a chair or they were dragging something else. And it got louder and louder. By this time, my mum and Jack and Jim were absolutely freaking out. They were pulling on my grandmother, but she sort of played it down. She was a bit cool. So she was a cool gran, you know what I mean? So she sort of didn't really acknowledge it at all, which freaked them out even more, because it got closer to the door upstairs. And then it got to the door, it stopped. The door at the top of the stairs then flew open. They heard it flew open. It hit the wall. The thing then dragged itself to the top of the stairs, took one step down on the stairs, and then my mum said it fell down the stairs. So you heard it fall down.
Wow.
And then it hit the door at the bottom of the stairs. And the whole frame, my mum said, just shook. Just literally shook. And by this time, my grandmother had heard that, and she got up. And she stood quite close to the door. My mum and my two uncles were completely losing their minds. Then the door began to creak, like there was pressure on the door. And if you can imagine a woman that's about 9 months pregnant, okay, the door was completely straight, my mum said, but halfway down, below the bolt, because they had a big old metal bolt on the big latch and bolt on the door, it began to bow out. And it bowed out and out, and it bowed out, so almost like the door was halfway down straight, and then it bowed out like that at the bottom. And it literally was like the wood, almost like it expanded, almost like it stretched, my mum said. She said she remembers it so vividly because she could see the grain of the wood separating, and she could hear it cracking, and the frame of the door was beginning to lose its strength. She said the latch on the door was lifting slightly with the pressure, and then suddenly it just bounced back like a big rubber band, and it then cascaded like a waterfall. She said she remembers it was like a wave. It just went almost like in a, when you see the adverts with the people in the wave and they're going through the wave and they're on the surfboard. That's what it looked like. So it was basically almost like a circle. The door at the bottom, the top of the door was completely fine, normal door, but at the bottom of the door, it went like a circle, almost like in a wave, and then it went doom. It almost like someone switched the light on, and it went completely hard, straight, the door.
That's fascinating. Is that something that just your grandparent saw, or were there other people?
My grandmother saw it, my mother saw it, and my two uncles saw it. And so many, many years later, I spoke to sadly, my grandparents and my mother and both my uncles now all passed away. But I had spoken to them about that. And you know what the crazy thing about it is? They all tell you the same story, and it never changes. Their recollection is exactly the same. I could ask my mum a year late, 5 years ago about it when she was alive. I asked my uncle a couple of months ago before he died. He died on Christmas Eve last year. If I was to go and ask him, they would tell exactly the same story. Their stories would be exact, almost word for word, what I'm telling you now. So they obviously experienced something in that cottage on that night, what was so vivid that it was imprinted on their brains, and they didn't rehearse anything. They just told me what they experienced. So my mum told me that story. So that was back in 1942. That story was. About 6 months later, my mum said, in the summer of that year, my mum knew it was the summer because she was off school. She was playing in the field next to the house, and 3 children turn up out of the blue. She's playing in the field, and suddenly these 3 children turn up. Now, I can't remember the name of the children, so the only one that sticks in my mind was the younger one, who was called Fall Over, because all he did was kept on falling over when they played. He had something wrong with his leg. It just gets even weirder. I'm not making it just
Right.
yeah, exactly.
I can relate. That's the thing. I wouldn't be surprised that these things can happen.
But my mum never connected that with what happened 6 months before in the winter. She never thought about it till many, many years later. So just for argument's sake, let's call the boy Henry and the girl Emily. And they were 12, 13. My mum was only about 4 or 5 at the time then. And then Fall Over used to come along, and she would play with them for hours and hours and hours in the summer. They'd come every day around about the same time and leave about the same time. And my mum never really thought nothing about it. They were 3 kids. They played with her. They did all these kind of old games that you used to play and stuff like that, and never really thought much about it. And one day, my mother was playing in the front garden, and there was a swing, and my grandmother had some friends over, and they were talking, and they had a son. Now, Emily and Henry and Fall Over with my mum playing in the garden by the swing. My Mum said, "Oh, I'm going to go in and get a glass of water because I'm thirsty." And she went inside, and my mum was chatting with a friend. I don't know who they were, and they had a son. She had a son, and my grandmother said to this boy, don't know what his name was. Let's call him George. Easy to just give him a name. Go out and play with Anne in the garden, which was my mum. And he was looking out the window, and he went, "No, I don't want to go out there." It was a lovely sunny day. It was summer, and my mother's friend said, "Why not?" And she goes, and my mum said, "Yeah, come and play with us." And she went out the door and went back to the children, and he said, "No, I'm not." He stood by the door leading out into the garden, to the back garden, into the front garden, and he said, "No, I don't want to go out there." He said, "She's already playing with 3 kids." And my grandmother got up thinking, "Who the hell are these 3 kids?" Looked out the kitchen window, and the woman that was visiting with the boy went to the door of the house. They both looked out, and they said together, "She's not playing with anybody. Go on, get out there." He completely freaked. This kid freaked out. My mum said he would not go out. He wouldn't go out. He was absolutely terrified. "No, I don't like those kids that are with her. They don't look real." It was his words, and he was about the same age as my mum, and he would not. So in the end, they kicked him out. Sort of kicked him out in the end, because they obviously wanted to have a good old chinwag about whatever was going on in the village at the time. He wouldn't play with my mum and these 3 children, and they said, "Oh, it's time for us to go now." And the boy just stood with his back against the door of the house. He wouldn't go anywhere near my mum. And they said, "Oh, well, we're going now anyway." And they went, and she never saw him again. They never come back. They never come and visited my mum. They'd visited her for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, only in the summer.
That's amazing. Did you want to ask something, Christine?
Yeah, so they could be seen by children, but they couldn't be seen by the adults. That's interesting. Interesting that he should be frightened of them.
My mum, I recall my mum telling me the look of terror on his face. She said he was almost like he was physically shaking. He wouldn't go into the garden. He pressed it back up against the door of the house.
So was he older than your mum? You say
no, he was the same age as my mum, around about 4 or 5 years old.
So there must have been something about those children that he could discern, that when you say, he said, they don't look real. That I find to be interesting. Perhaps he could almost see through them. That might be something.
Maybe he saw something that my mother didn't, because they were always kind and friendly to my mum. My mum was saying they'd play, but Fall Down would always be the one who was last, because all he ever kept on doing was falling over. So they were forever picking him up and saying, "Come on." But
do you think that was connected with the event 6 months earlier then?
I don't know so much if it was connected, but my mum did remember that he had something wrong with his leg.
Yeah.
That's why he kept on falling over.
Can we go back to that just a minute?
Yeah.
So that event occurred, which was pretty horrifying by the sound of it. What happened afterwards? Did it continue to happen, or?
Yeah, quite a few things happened in that house, in that little cottage in the 1940s. At some point, obviously, they outgrew that house, because they were and they moved to the house that they lived in until my grandparents then passed away. But it sort of kind of, this sort of thing sort of followed my my mum, if that makes any sense. And I don't know if it's sort of kind of connected to everyone else, that because we're 5 in our family. Sadly, my brother passed away about 7 years ago. But the house that I remember growing up in, people think, the Enfield Haunted was a horror. This house, that was a walk in the park compared to what we experienced in that house as a family, along with my mum, which I'm gonna get into. I don't remember. I was born in a house, and then at some point, because the house was too small, because our family was too big, we moved to another house. I don't recall anything about the old house.
Right.
The house that I was born in. I remember the house that I grew up in.
Right. Okay.
So my earliest recollections of what was going on in that house, my mum always played it down, almost like it was not real. But we know that my mum knew what was going on in that house was real, because she experienced the same stuff that we experienced.
Do you think that was a natural mother's desire to play it down for you, so that you kids didn't feel the fear so much? I mean, if she'd got a bit hysterical running around and being frightened, that would have made you more frightened. So I wonder if she just played it down a little bit, even though she knew it was happening.
I think so. Yeah, I think it was a mother's protection of because my parents split up when I was very young, when I was only 4 or 5 years old, and my mum didn't remarry into back when I was in my 40s. She remarried again to a gentleman that she stayed with until she passed away. And then she eventually moved out of the house that I grew up in to move in with him.
So what happened in this house then that you grew up in?
So the earliest recollection I remember, I had the mumps, and when we were sick, we always used to be allowed to be sick stay in my mum's bed, because she obviously had her own bedroom. It was a 3-bedroomed house in the middle of a road in a small village in Buckinghamshire. I won't give the name. I'm not going to give the street, because I don't want people going and bothering these people, because that's the last thing they need. So the earliest, getting back to the earliest recollection, so I had the mumps and I was in bed, and when we had mumps, we was allowed to stay in my mum's bedroom in the bed, and she'd always bring the black and white portable television up and set it up on her dressing room table so we could watch crap TV, because it was back then when we was kids growing up, so we could watch TV all day. That was one of the perks when we was ill. So I'm in bed watching, I think it was a Western or something. I was watching something on television, and I weren't feeling great, and I'm laid there, and I reach over to get a drink, because we was always allowed a glass of water. I remember it vividly, a glass of water and some fruit that my mum managed to, because we never had anything when we was growing up. It was bitterly poor. She always used to manage to get us a little bit of fruit, like an apple or some grapes or something. I don't know where. She probably just managed to find some money from somewhere for us. Anyway, I reach over and get my drink and take my eyes off the television. I put the drink to my lips, and there's a little girl in the room, stood by the door, away from the door. In the door, the door was slightly ajar. The only way she could have got in would have been by opening the door, but she didn't open the door, and she wasn't looking at me. She was looking behind me to the corner. So she was looking. So this is me. She was looking like this. So if you imagine, she was looking in a different direction, not at me. But she was so vivid. She had a blue lace dress, long, no shoes and no socks. So she was bare feet. She had a long dress, lace, white lace with blue some sort of flowery pattern, and she had lace on her cuffs and lace on her collars. And she had in her hair something like, you know what corn dollies are?
Yeah.
They were plaited. They were
Yes.
plaited into children's hair. Well, with girls' hair. That's all I can describe. Of like little corn. I vividly remember they were white, and they had little sticky out arms like that, and a little head. And I remember seeing they were in her hair. And I'm looking at her, and she's not looking at me, and I think, who the hell was this? You know. And I don't say anything, and then I hear something to the left of me, and I think it's something that happens on the television. I look at the TV, look back, and she's gone. So I get up, go downstairs, and say to I thought my mum had visitors. I said, "Mum, is anybody here?" And she's got her back to me, doing the washing up, like variably, like she's always doing something. She went, "No." I go, "So who's the little girl in my room?" And she gave me this look as if to think, how the hell did you see that? She gave me that look like, what the hell? And she said to me, no, you didn't see anything. You're not feeling very well. Go back to bed. But she gave me the look. She knew that I knew what she was talking about. So I go back to bed, try to put it out of my mind. At some point, I fall asleep. I wake up and I'm on my back. I'm looking up at the ceiling, and then I see, I mean, this is going to sound mental. I can't even think that. I see a woman, you know, the old Banshee films. You can see my cat. No way.
We love cats here. It's fine.
You know, like the old Banshee movies that you see with a white flowing dress and stuff like that. There's a woman floating. I'm not making. Maybe I was ill. Maybe I was imagining it. Maybe I had a fever. I'm trying to be logical. My logical brain now is trying to work it in my head. Now I'm much older now, trying to debunk it. But I see this woman, and she's above me. She's got a white flowing dress. She's looking directly at me, and she's got a hand, and she's reaching down. So I reach up from laying down to try and reach her like this. She's smiling. She's got a necklace on. And the necklace is hanging down, so it's hanging out. So she's definitely vertical above me. So, because her necklace is hanging down, and the necklace it was a single pearl on a like little white or cream ribbon. I remember it vividly. And I'm thinking, she's there. So I get up on my bed, stand on the bed and try to reach up and grab her. And as I try to, she then slowly goes up further and further until she's getting smaller and smaller until she disappears.
So were you frightened?
At the time, it didn't frighten me because I didn't understand what was going on. So
I get that. And the little girl, did that frighten you?
No, it didn't, because I just automatically thought it was someone that had come and visited my mum, because my mum had lots of friends who had children, and we were all around about that same age. You know, I think I was about 7, maybe between 7 and 10 years old when I had the mumps.
What I'm thinking is the little girl didn't frighten you, and this happened straight afterwards, so you weren't in a frightened state at all, were you, when this woman appeared?
I'm just wondering if it was a lucid.
Yeah, good point.
I always try to say maybe it was a lucid dream. I was dreaming it, but if I was dreaming, why was I stood on the bed wide awake, reaching up like this? I think
things that we don't understand sometimes, but I was dreaming or something like that, or I was hallucinating. I believe we see these things, yeah? So, yeah, I mean, did she not frighten you at all?
No. Things that happened later because I grew up in that house and I moved away and I travelled and I come back. So it's funny because as a child, as us being kids in that house, we weren't particularly frightened as under 10 years old. When we got to our teens, that's when it got scary.
Right.
Now, maybe it's naivety. Maybe we're just naive and we were just not realising what was going on. But as we got older, things got more intense and things got more scarier, and the weird things really happened. Like, I'll give you a for instance, right? Hairbrushes went missing. Not one, not two, not three, not four. I cannot count the amount of hairbrushes that you'd put it down, right? Because back then we always used to use the same hairbrush when we were kids, because that's what you did, because we never had any money. So you'd put it down, go into the living room, you come back and it'd be gone, and it'd be a standing joke in the house. Oh, who's had the hairbrush? Well, no one had it because it had just gone. It got
so was it only hairbrushes that was missing?
No, there was money. There was jewellery that would disappear and come back. The hairbrushes never come back. It got to a point where we would manage to scrounge enough money up, pocket money, and from my mum to go down to the shop, and the shopkeeper would see us in the shop and would automatically have the hairbrush on the counter ready for us.
That's sweet. I kind of wanted to start curiosity, like, I can relate to the story. I'll tell you why shortly, because I don't want to interrupt your story too much. But was there a lot of tension happening in the family at the time? So I think you mentioned that your family was going through a divorce when you were younger. Like,
yeah, my father.
Did it happen around that time?
Yeah, my father had already left by then many years before. So so I didn't really know my dad because he left when I was about 4 or 5 years old. So I never really had anything to do with him when I was growing up and also into my adult life. And he passed away at some point 5 or 6 years ago, and I only found out through Facebook through a distant relative that he died. So we never really had anything to do with our father, which is probably
so was there anything else happening at the time causing tension?
Not really, no. We were quite a close family because we never had anything and we were desperately poor. It was it was a family where we stuck together, you know what I mean? It was just, there was 5 of us.
I see.
There's my mum, my sister, and 4 brothers, okay? And we all were we were quite close. So there was never really, obviously you had the sibling arguments and stuff like that. You know, that's a natural thing. You're going to have that as growing up as kids. But my sister is another thing that I remember. My sister had some friends for a sleepover, a load of girlfriends, and I remember being in our bedroom watching television, and my sister was then, by that time, had moved into the other bedroom because she'd got older, obviously. So my mum then decided to move her out of the bedroom that we all shared, and my older brother then had to move out of his bedroom. We weren't impressed, to come and be with us in the larger bedroom, and my sister had one of the smaller bedrooms because it was a three-bedroom house. So she was in there with all her mates, and they were having a laugh. It was all a bit noisy. Our house is always a little bit chaotic. And my mum was in bed, and she said she woke up and there was a little girl stood next to her bed in a blue dress with these things in her hair. These corn.
Who woke up? Your mum or your sister?
My mum.
Your mum, right.
My mum automatically thought it was a girl who'd got lost and come into my mum's bedroom.
Right.
So she said to her, "Oh, my dear," she said, my mum always used to talk like that. "Oh, my dear," I remember her telling me, "you're in the wrong bedroom. It's the one next door." And she went like that. And as she did that, her hand went straight through her. And then it was, you know, when you blow smoke and it swirls round, the whole child went into this like smoky thing, and then sort of like went like that, like almost like went in all different directions, my mum said. My mum was not impressed. She screamed the f***ing house down. We all, of course, come running from every direction. But she played it down. She said, "Oh, I had a bad dream." But she told us the next day after everybody had gone what she'd seen. And I said to my mum, "So is that the same little girl I saw when I was sick then?" And my mum gave me that look, you know, like, yeah, most probably. As we got older, then the hairbrushes went missing. We all worked in the same factory back then. When I was older, when I was about 16, I left school, started working. I didn't go to study in my 30s when I was I got a couple of degrees, but only when I was in my 30s, because I didn't have the chance to when I was younger. So we all worked at this same factory, and we was on different shifts, and it was a 6 till 2 and a 2 to 10 shift. So 6 in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Monday to Friday, and then a 2 o'clock to 10 o'clock shift, Monday to Friday. And because we all were on different shifts, and I think my brother used to work a night shift, none of us were ever home at the same time during the day. So literally, it was one person was leaving, another person was coming in from work. And it was always on a Friday. This was always on a Friday. We used to get the wage packet, used to get paid cash back then. You remember that stuff that we used to have then paper money stuff that we don't know how to use anymore. Where we all got paid cash. So I'd always come home, and I'd always want to go out with my mates, have a couple of beers after a long week at work. So I'd have thrown my wage packet on the side, jump in the shower, get myself ready, come out of the shower, hairbrush wouldn't be there, that had gone, you know, couldn't find a hairbrush. But then I started noticing, and not just me as well as my sister as well, that our wage packets had been opened, ripped open. Our money would be fanned out in monetary order, from pound notes back then to £20 notes, and our coins would be stacked up on the side in their monetary order as well. That happened so many times, I cannot even remember how many times that happened. And I was the only person in the house. There was no one else in the house.
So no money went missing.
No money went missing. It was just fanned out and stacked up.
Okay. Wow.
I don't get it. That used to freak me out. So I never wanted to stay. I would go and stay at friends' house, start staying at friends' houses over the weekends. And I asked if I could stay, you know, if I sleep here tonight and stuff like that. And they said, back then when it was okay back then, you know. So I started to spend a little bit less time in the evenings at home. One of the other things I remember is when I was younger, I'm sorry, I'm not doing this in chronological order, but I'm just remembering some of the things.
That's okay, just as it comes out, it's fine.
Yeah, I used to collect toy soldiers, and I used to have hundreds of the bloody things, right, in boxes and in wherever, all over the place. And my sister was coming down the stairs. I was at the bottom of the stairs, and out of nowhere, literally out of nowhere, from thin air, a toy soldier drops right in front of her.
I believe you, because that's happened.
Right in front of her, right on the stairs, in front of her.
It.
She looked at me thinking that I'd thrown it. She started having a go, "Oh, you're trying to scare me, blah, blah, blah." And as she said that, one flew straight past her head from the top of the stairs and hit the front door of the house. We both look up, and then they were going bing, bing, bing. But you couldn't see where they were coming from. They were literally coming out of nowhere. There was 5 or 6 of them. They went ping, 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 and you could hear them. You could hear them almost like, I can't explain the noise. It was almost like noise, a clicking noise, like someone clicking their fingers. And as they were clicked, they would appear and they would bounce down the stairs or hit the door. And me and my sister were just stood there looking at this. There was about 6 of them.
To me, this screams poltergeist to me. I don't know about you, Christine, though. Like it seems like that. But I have a big question to ask you when you're ready.
So I couldn't explain it. My sister completely freaked out, ran into the kitchen, ran into the garden. I followed her, and there was one of these toy stores. Because my sister used to have really long, matty hair when she was. There was one of the toy soldiers was stuck in her hair because it hit the back of her head. And I went, "You've got one of those toy soldiers," and she's going, "Oh, I know when you get a spider," and you go, "Ah," like that. So she managed to get it out, and we sat in the garden for about 3 hours until my oldest brother, come home, and we told him. We all went into the house. The toy soldiers were on the floor in the hallway, because we had a little hallway. There was the hallway, the stairs. So you can imagine like a box hallway, the stairs going up to the bedrooms with a landing, and then you had the living room and the kitchen either side of that.
Yeah.
And the front door. He shouted, "Who the was up there messing around?" And then we heard it. Oh, this makes me emotional just thinking about it. Sorry.
Take your time.
We heard something that shook that house. I can't even. It was like, remember I told you about the dragging sound? This wasn't like, this was almost like a screeching sound. But the thing was, it went from our bedroom, through the landing, into my sister's bedroom, into my mum's bedroom, who wasn't living there then. She had moved out with her new husband. And then it sort of came round almost like a siren, and then come down the stairs. We ourselves. Sorry, I'm swearing. I ran into the living room. Well, stupid. The only place I could get out would be through the window because there was nowhere else. My mum, my brother, and my sister ran into the kitchen. I can't explain the sound. If I could explain it, it was almost like a screeching sound, but it was a vibration. It wasn't a vibration. I can't explain. It's hard to explain it, but we all heard it, and it was almost like a response. And things then just got progressively worse. Like we'd hear someone or something at night walking from one side of the house to the other, but not just like a little walking. This was like stomping sound, banging, boom, 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 like someone stomping on the floor. Stairs had railing. Stairs had banisters. You could hear something going, juk, 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 like someone putting something across the banisters. You'd be in the living room or the kitchen in the evening, and we'd all be out. There'd be no one upstairs. You'd hear a boop, boop, boop on the banisters, the railings of the banisters upstairs that used to be on the top of the stairs. You'd hear it in the day. You'd hear it at night when it wake you up. For me, it's quite difficult to recount it all, but I feel I need to, if you know what I mean, to get it out of my system. But I never really do get it out. You never really do get it out of your system.
I completely get that. That's quite an intense childhood, isn't it? Quite frankly, like I've lived a similar experience. I get what it's like, but yeah. But I know Christine wants to ask you something, so go ahead, Christine.
While you were or when with this going off, did you report it to anybody, or did you get involved with a psychic or a medium, get anybody round to or anything like
No, because my mum always said she was a bit of a witch, and now I was getting on to funny you should say that. I'm sure my mum was part of a coven, because we was always sent to bed on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock in the evening, regardless of whether it was a summer holidays or a school night, and we would sneak down stairs and peek through the. Our house was an old house; it had gaps in the doors. We could actually see through the crack in the door, and we would see my mum sat around with people
that?
round
Right,
the
can I
table.
stop you right there? As you're talking about this, I think your mum was a medium, and right,
She
okay.
was a
So
medium,
when she
yeah.
tried to play things down, she was obviously aware of what was going on, and that may have been the reason that you were experiencing things in the house. That because of her ability and her openness, stuff was attracted to that particular area. Have you ever considered that?
Yeah, I knew. My mum always said she was a bit of
Yeah,
medium. She used to do palm reading. When people used to come around the house and she used to tell them stuff and they didn't believe it, they'd go home and then they'd ask their mum and dads, and they'd come back and say, "How did you know that?" and stuff like that. And you know, I haven't got onto the picture, have I? I haven't told you about the photo.
Oh, do tell us.
Oh my God. Okay, right. This is even more. So, while my mum was still living at the house, she when we first moved into the house and my dad was still there, he apparently, so my mum tells me, had found an old frame underneath the cupboard stairs. Flipped it over, stuck some wallpaper to it. Now I remember the wallpaper because it was green, grainy wallpaper, greeny blue, grainy wallpaper. And I know it was green, grainy wallpaper because we had it in our living room for absolutely years until my mum finally moved out and we redecorated. That's how, because I know it. So he cut a bit of this wallpaper out that was obviously left over from when they decorated when they moved in. Stuck this old frame, this glass frame that he'd found, flipped it over, stuck the wallpaper, and then stuck pictures of us kids in the front garden, old black and white photographs. Now I remember that being on the wall for as long as I can remember. Okay. One day my mum was hoovering up and apparently it fell off the wall. Now that's probably just either natural or paranormal, I don't know. Things fall down all the time, so I can debunk it. It was probably on a hook that had been there since 1901 or whatever, you know. So it fell down. My mum then picked it up and put it in the living room by the cabinet. She was hoovering up when I'd come home. We'd come home from school, and I could hear her hoovering. I thought she was a little bit hoovering a bit late. Apparently she'd been out with some friends, so she was hoovering. And you hear she always used to swear when she did something wrong, because that's what mums do, I suppose. She'd hit the frame and she'd broke the glass in the frame. Now, as the frame broke, it fell on its side into the living room. So she picked the frame up and brought it into the kitchen. So me, my brother, all my brothers were there. We all come home from school at the same time. She flipped over the frame. You're not going to believe this. On the back of this piece of card, there was another photograph of two girls stood by our front door, open front door of our house. There was a taller girl and there was a younger girl. It was a black and white photograph probably from the early 1900s. And one of those little girls had in her hair white little corn dollies. Now that photograph
Whoa.
been there for years. We all looked at it and we thought, what the fudge?
Yeah.
This cannot be real. You cannot make this up. This is not happening. It can't be true. I remember looking at the photograph. Now that photograph, I asked my brother the other day about the photograph. Did he maybe have it when he moved out? He said he don't know what happened to the photograph. It literally, within a couple of days, it had disappeared. I recall it being actually flipped back over and being put on the wall, but maybe that's just what I recall. But if anybody would ask me to draw that picture of those two little girls, I guarantee you I could draw it perfectly. Now, when I say the white things, you couldn't actually see they were corn dollies in her hair, but because the photo was an old photograph, but you could see she had two white bands with stomach stuck up like that in her hair. And my mum looked at, we just couldn't believe it. It was almost like something out of a film, you know, when you know, it's like something out of a horror movie, like something out of like something you'd see on Netflix or something. It's just completely crazy, and we couldn't believe it.
All those things that happened to you, is that what brought you into paranormal investigations then?
Yeah, very much so. I'd always been quite fascinated by it anyway, but this sort of drew me into being a paranormal investigator. But you know, I'm always looking for that ultimate bit of evidence. You know what I mean? That thing that will top what I experienced. So,
What do you think that ultimate bit of evidence? Because see, I have a theory. I think that ghost hunters will be the people that prove that ghosts are real, because they're going to capture them somehow, either on their, their cameras. So, what for you would be the ultimate bit of evidence?
one of the ultimate bit of evidence is probably what happened to me at a location about 10 years ago. We were in a haunted old inn. I was with a team by then. I'd been with them 7 years by then. We were all in this room together. It was around about 2:00 in the morning. We were all knackered. We'd had enough. We were all tired. We wanted to go home. It was like a 3-hour drive home. So we thought we're going to finish and do one more vigil, and we're all pissed off home. Sorry, I didn't swear. We're all going to go home. We might have to bleep that.
Don't worry about it. It's okay.
We'll all go home. So I put a device out on the landing, a REM pod.
Yeah,
it's an EMF device. For all those paranormal investigators that know what an EMF device is, that's fine. The REM pod is, you'll probably explain it. It's just an EMF device that detects EMF fields, electromagnetic fields. I stuck it on the landing, closed the big old door, very similar to the old big old door that my mum told me about in her house, with a big old latch. We're all in this room, and we're calling out, and we're doing EVP, electronic voice phenomena, trying to catch voices, trying to hear anything. We're all a bit knackered, you know. We'd had enough by that. It was a pretty crap night, to be honest. A few things had happened, but nothing groundbreaking. But then the REM pod on the stairs did one solitary beep, and the guy who's my best mate looked at me and said, "What was that noise?" I said, "I put a REM pod out on the stairs." He goes, "Oh." He said, "Did it just beep?" And I went, "Yeah." And as I said, "Yeah," it beeped again. Just one beep, beep, like that. Nothing great. I said, "Could be just interference or something." I've got my back to this door. He stood next to me here. There's another investigator with a big, do you remember Armchair Thriller? I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
You know the old armchair, these big old armchairs that you can buy. There was one big heavy armchair in the corner of the room with a lamp behind it. She was sat in there, and there was a table next to her, and there was two other investigators, and then there was another one that had his back to a double bed. It was a bedroom, obviously, yeah. So then we're not thinking about, and I'm like saying, is anybody there? You know, please come forward, communicate with us, like you know. And then suddenly there's this massive, and I mean massive, bang on the door. And I mean so massive that the latch literally lifted up and then dropped back down, but the door didn't open. We all crapped ourselves thinking, what the hell was that? I thought it was my mate messing about, but we don't mess about. That's one thing I know on every investigation I've ever been on. We do not mess about. We don't, you know, play silly buggers or anything like that. We do it, it's serious, but we have a joke, you know what I mean? So the bang was so loud that the window by the table literally shook. You could see it. You see, like, the whole room sort of kind of shook. And then that's when it happened. If you could imagine a mini tornado, right? It came through that door. Door didn't open. It came through the door. Now, I know it was because I felt the rush of air go past and move my hair. It went past me, and it was like a howl, almost very similar to what happened when I was at the house, but it wasn't. I can't explain it. The rush of air came through the door, past me, because I felt it brush past my arm and my face. It went around me, and then went across the table. The woman that was sat in that massive armchair, you know the Matrix films? It literally, this is like something out of Matrix films. I'm not telling you, the armchair, this big heavy armchair, lifted up
With
in
her
the
in
air,
it.
lifted up in the air and threw her onto the table. Okay. She flew onto the table, knocking stuff off the table. It then went around the other two investigators, like it did me. You could see stuff moving. You could see ornaments that were in that room that were moving because the rush of air. It went around them two, and then there was the guy who's no longer part of the team anymore. He left a couple of years ago. He had his back to the bed. So, you know when Keanu Reeves does his back thing with his bullets in the... That's basically what happened. So, he lifted up, went back, and then it threw him onto the bed. This was all in about 5 or 6 seconds. This happened. Threw him on the bed. He landed on the bed, flipped over and fell on the opposite side of the bed. And then the rush of air went around us.
So what more evidence do you need, I suppose, would be my question.
Well, I've got that. I've got the audio buried on an old laptop somewhere of the whole incident.
Yeah.
Wow.
Would you be willing to share that?
But I've got audio of that actual, because I was recording at the time. And you can, if I find, I think it's in my old lock-up garage that I've got. I've got so many EVPs. I'd have to find out the old laptop, charge it up if it's still chargeable or something. I would love to find it out, but I definitely have.
Yeah, that's extraordinary because I've heard of experiences like this happening to other people. I know you, Christine, have seen quite a few crazy things. I've seen objects levitate off the ground. I've seen bizarre entities. So I can understand your wanting or desire to fully understand these things. But to me, it's like we're asking, what is your ultimate evidence say? But I suppose in a way, haven't you already encountered the ultimate evidence? Because you've seen things very few people have seen in this world.
I don't know because I've seen other things. I've seen a child at an old tea room walk past the doorway when I was doing a private investigation. If someone asked her to come in and investigate a tea room, in Oxfordshire. I saw it. Then the guy who was next to me saw it walk one way, and I saw it walk the other way. She was in a white Victorian nightgown. She was carrying a candle as well. I know it sounds like something out of a stupid film. You see these horror films, and you see
I've seen them.
all these things on TikTok with ghosts with carrying candles and stuff like that around. Then, and that's what it was like. The other experience at the same location was when I took a group of people round one night. We were in the barn, and we was at the back of the barn, and all the rest of the group were upstairs. I see a beam of light shoot on the doorway of the barn. Thinking it's another member of our team, I call out and say, "We are doing a vigil, remember?" The beam of light just stayed there. So you remember old hurricane lamps? That's what it looked like, a beam of light from a hurricane lamp. Like they used to wave when at the trains, the old lamps like that. There was no sound, and then the beam of light was so direct. It was on the archway of the entrance to the barn. So I called out again and said, "We're doing a vigil here." No answer. The beam of light was still there. So I take a step forward, and as I take a step forward, the beam of light then moves down the wall of the opening of the wall, because the gap is about that thick to the entrance to the thing. So the archway with the gap. The beam of light then goes down the wall, and as it's going down the wall, it's getting darker and darker. The people that are with me are now getting a bit nervous. I'm getting feeling a bit weird. The light goes down, 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 gets to the bottom of the doorway. Then as it moves across the doorway into the centre of the door, it goes pitch black. By this time, the people behind me are now absolutely freaking out. I'm looking directly at it, and then it forms up into something. Not a person, not a figure, just a mass, a black mass. So it comes up from the bright light, getting darker and darker, goes across the floor, gets to the centre of the doorway, then comes up, almost like a blob. The Blob, the old film, The Blob. Something like that. By this time, the people now are wanting to get out. The only way out is through that doorway. They are freaking out. I'm just there, my mouth's open. There's no way I'm not going to document this, you know what I mean? No way I'm not going to witness this. It goes into this mass, and then if you can imagine when you see a raindrop dropping and then splashing, that's how only way I can explain. It came up, then went down into and it almost splattered out and then just disappeared.
Incredible.
That was in exactly the same location where we had the incident with the wind.
So that's interesting. That's a vibration, isn't it?
It's just some of the things. So yeah, I'm always on the hunt for something.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite exciting. My kind of big question that's kind of been boiling over time is I relate to you in so many ways. I don't know if you know my story in particular, though, but I won't repeat it again because I think all my viewers will be bored hearing my story so many times. But my question is, considering that your mum might be a medium anyway, at least you say that you think she was. Have you ever thought that you might be?
Yeah, she was, because she used to read people's palms, and she used to tell us stuff about us. She told me stuff about me that's come true. She said to me, "You're going to go to America. You're going to live in America." I went to America and I lived in America. She said, "You're going to be on television." Been on television lots of times. She said, "But you're never quite going to hit the potential that you've always dreamed of. She said, but you'll be there, but you won't be, how can I put it, like mainstream, if you know what I mean. And that's pretty much what's happened. The only last incident I'm going to tell you is the bed incident. The beds. What happened to us in the beds. Saturday morning. I know it was a Saturday because we was all at home. We was all in our bedroom, in the big bedroom upstairs. It was raining and we were all debating if to go out and play in the garden or go and see our friends. It was Saturday morning. It was around about 9 o'clock. My mum was still asleep in bed. So it was my sister, me, my twin brothers, not my oldest brother, because he had his own room then. My sister was still sharing their bedroom with us. So we sat there chatting away. And then my bed, now all I can just say, my bed covers began to go up. I'm sat on my bed, in the middle of my bed. So in the middle of my bed covers begin to go up. Like, you know, if you put your feet inside and you put your feet inside, like almost like a wigwam sort of effect. So they keep going up so much that it pushes me off my bed. As I'm falling off my bed, I'm looking across at my sister's bed, and that's doing exactly the same thing. I'm on the floor, my sister's on the floor now. The covers are almost like that, almost like a wigwam shape. Like someone's inside the covers, putting their feet up. I look across at my older brother, one of my older brothers, he was a twin to my other brother. They had bunk beds. Now, get this. Both the bunk beds were doing exactly the same thing. So the top bunk and the bottom bunk were all doing the same thing. All in this, like, covers up, like someone is inside there. You know, like out of, how can I put it? What's that film? Sixth Sense, with a kid, and he's in the wigwam thing and the sheets over somebody. That's what it was like. Like someone was sat up in the bed with the covers. The bunk beds, so the top bunk and the bottom bunk, my sister's bed and my bed. So much, my brother, we all sat on the floor, and I thought, I'm not having no one's kicking. So I jumped on the covers, and as I jumped on the covers, they just sort of went collapsed down. The other, without anybody doing anything, did exactly the same. They all just dropped pretty much at the same time. You could still see where it had been, but they sort of went down on their own without. I jumped on mine. I can't explain that. That's so vivid. Because I remember we used to have old nylon sheets back then. You know, we used to get into bed and you just slide to the bottom of the bed because we couldn't afford cotton sheets back then. So we used to have sheets. We didn't have duvets. Only posh people had duvets back then because they had lots of money. So we always used to have cotton sheets, not cotton nylon sheets. Well. My mum used to fold them over. You know, like old hospital beds, stuff like that. That's how we used to have. So yeah, so I can't. That is something else that.
It's interesting, and this is just a thought here. So they were all making this pyramid shape, yeah. And once you jumped on it and broke it, essentially, all the others came down.
Yeah, all the others came down. Yeah,
I wonder if it's a spirit that is conjuring this in some way, using vibration to lift them, and you breaking that by jumping on it, just everything went down. It's just my thoughts are running away with me what that could be, because that was really quite bizarre, isn't it?
It's okay. We'll round up soon anyway, but that's
I'll
tell
you
fine.
one last thing. I'm sorry if I'm taking a long time. Yeah, one last thing was the blue lightning in the kitchen. Now, I'd come back from travelling, and my mum had come and visited my brother, who had just had a child, and I was staying with my mum. So me and my mum went up to visit my brother. We was in the kitchen while my brother was attending to the baby, and his wife went down to the shops. I remember it. She went to go and get milk because we didn't have any milk because we wanted a cup of tea. So she's out, my brother's upstairs. And then me and my mum was just chatting about anything, can't really remember. And I hear this, we both hear it at the same time, like almost like a cracking, fizzling, popping sound. And we look at each other. I said, "Do you hear that?" Yeah, so I said, yeah, we hear it. And we both look up at the same time, and directly in the corner of the kitchen, right in the corner where the corners meet, the wall and the corners, you could see like a little something blue, like a little worm poking out. And it was going zzz, zzz, like lightning, like electricity. And I'm looking at my mum. I said, "Mum, do you see that?" She goes, I see that. Goes, "What the freaking hell is that?" And as I said that, it shot out of the wall, out of the ceiling, out of the corner, and it crawled across the ceiling, like almost like that, like a baby, fizzing, cracking, popping as it went, like almost a streak of lightning that you'd see in the sky, like fork lightning. And it went right across the ceiling, and it then got to the other side of the room, to the corner where the corners meet in the kitchen, and then it started doing this, making a circle, and it was going. You could hear it like this against the wall. You could actually hear like this. You can hear the tapping noise, and it's going like this. It's almost like it's worming its way, trying to get into the wall, and then eventually it does, and it's almost like a spiral, and it stretches itself out like this in a spiral.
Extraordinary.
Anyway,
Because it implies it had a physical kind of something, like physical enough to actually interact.
Yeah, and it was blue, and it was crackling and fizzling like electricity. Like, sometimes when you get a spark of electricity that comes out when you're doing your battery on your car or something. That does that a disservice, because it was similar to that, but it was nothing like that. We physically could see that. And my mum we never told my brother or his wife. We just kept that to ourselves. And shortly before she died, about 3 or 4 weeks before she died, I went to visit her in hospital, and I said, "Mum, do you remember the blue?" And as soon as I said the blue, she said, "What, the blue light in the kitchen?" She goes, "Yeah, I remember it." So yeah, that just another one of the many things. I mean, I could be on air for about another hours, but I think you'd fall asleep by the time. But yeah, that's just some of the experiences that I've had over the many years, and what my mum had explained to me, what she's happened and stuff like that. So
yeah, but still, what an amazing life you've had. It's like extraordinary, really. Like, thank you for taking the time and telling us all those. I try not to interrupt too much, though, because I feel like in a way you telling these stories is part of your healing in a way, because I think in a way it does kind of traumatize you, doesn't it? A little bit, like seeing these things. I know these are shared experiences as well, and
yeah,
I know that you've chosen to pursue these experiences.
I think over time it's not
So
it's not
you're
so
starting kind of moving beyond
traumatic. I
that.
think now it's just that it's an ongoing search now to get answers. I think a lot. I think you must hear that a lot from people that have these experiences. In my logical now brain as an adult from a childhood, I am now trying to debunk it all.
Get you.
But the more
Go on,
I think about it, I can't. Therefore, it's a search. It's an ongoing. story.
I think it is, Phil. It's you witness something that's so extraordinary that, like you say, as you get older, everything's going, no, you couldn't have seen that. You must have been off your head or something like
Yeah.
that. And I think it's a real desire for us to prove to ourselves that I did see that.
Mm.
And I think that's where, because, again, similarly, I've seen things and it's made me search.
Yeah.
And it's your search, I guess, morphs into a more serious,
Yeah.
you
It's
know,
become very serious for me as a
yeah,
paranormal
yeah.
investigator. I've become more logical minded in my thought process over the years that I've grown to do this, and I'm quick to debunk stuff because it is easily explained, and I think that is a big problem with the paranormal community as a whole. We tend to think something is automatically paranormal because we don't logically think about it first. I've had thousands of experience, and I can only base it on these hands that I could say 10 of those are unexplainable, other than what I've explained to you now from my childhood and what I've
Oh, I
experienced
would agree
as a
with
paranormal
I
investigator.
mean, I think as an investigator, we owe it to ourselves to try and debunk it. And what you're left with, and it's like that's the only answer that it can be. So I'm with you. Do you think you've got more skeptical as you've got older?
I have got, because I'm quick to debunk something, but I've been on some investigations lately, and I've been working more with EVP, and the EVPs I get are sometimes you think, nah, that's not real, but it is. So I'm more into sort of like the technical side of stuff now. I don't really go into the spiritual side of stuff. I find that a little bit, I don't know. I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but we all have our ways of doing things.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
horses for courses, they say,
Yeah.
So each person has their own way of investigating.
Well, I always think there's room for everybody.
There is. I'm kind of curious though, like, yeah, you said your mum was a medium though, but I wonder if they're attracted to you, like, because I don't know. To me, like, as you say, like, you've experienced quite extraordinary things when you're younger. As you've grown older, you become more skeptical and more knowing about the world and being able to debunk certain things. But it seems to be like, I hate to use the expression like chaos following you. I mean, it follows me too. But you seem to be somebody quite full of energy as well. Like, I wonder if in a way you're almost like a battery of sorts, like whatever they may be, they can see you. They seem to want to come to you to maybe get your attention or something
I think
like
that's
that.
a possibility. I'm not. I'm about as psychic as a brick. You know what I mean? But
I think you're more than you know.
yeah, possibly I am. I don't know, but I don't sort of tend to explore it. I tend to feel it, if you know what I mean. It's a difficult one because everything that I've spoken to you about in my brain, I can't debunk that. I would only tell you stuff that I can't debunk. There's no point in me telling you a story and then tell you, oh, well, I debunk that, because it's a waste of time. I want to tell people things that have happened that I can't, to this day, explain. I still cannot explain how we saw the blue lightning, how the soldiers come down the stairs, how the money got fanned out, how the coins got stacked, that crazy noise that we heard, the small girl, the picture. I can't. And to this day, I think I don't really want to try and debunk those things because I can't debunk them in my brain. And also, my family experienced the same things at the same time as me, and we all experience those certain things. So it's hard to debunk it when 5 other people experience the same thing.
Oh no, it's great. The more people that witness these things, the better it is, because it supports it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's people like yourself speaking out about your experiences and sharing those stories that makes the paranormal field so fascinating, because all you're doing is contributing to the body of evidence of the various things that we experience, and also with more evidence comes more opportunity to debunk certain things. I suppose technically you never always prove these kind of things because there are things about the world of science that we don't quite know yet. We're still learning about the world. Our understanding is vastly, expanding over time. But like I say, but you telling your story here, and I know you've done on many other platforms as well, just inspires other people to tell their own, because some people are just scared, quite frankly. They've experienced something, they're too scared to talk about it through, because of social stigma, or just because sometimes they have scary stories to tell, but it helps to heal people,
You're exactly right, Sam. You're exactly right about the social stigma. You always get someone that will say, I'm going to tell you a story. And you know what? And then you always follow up with, you're going to think I'm crazy.
Yeah, it's that word crazy. We always do that, crazy or weird, don't we?
You're not crazy. You've had an experience that you can't explain.
Absolutely.
It doesn't make you crazy.
No,
it doesn't mean it's paranormal. Maybe I've got some of my vast knowledge in my 30 years of doing this that I can maybe explain what might have happened. I'm not saying that's the answer, because it's not. But sometimes you give a little bit of relief to someone who does tell you a story. Oh, I had this experience, but exactly A, B, C. Then you say, well, I've had a similar experience. Could it have been that? And they sort of look at you as if you get it. You understand. You know what I mean? You understand what I'm talking. You know. And so for me, that's also a little bit of a relief, and also a little bit of self-pride, maybe, that you're trying to help someone, because paranormal is not about just investigating him. It's now become a part of that. You try to also, you're helping people as well now. It's almost like you're a counsellor.
Exactly that. It's just helping people heal, and that's the beautiful thing about these kind of podcasts. Really, it's just helping people to work through things to better understand, and it's about the pursuit of knowledge ultimately. But I'll try and round things off now anyway, because I could ask you a million and one questions, though, Phil. But I'd love to.
That's fine.
But maybe if you want to come back again and tell, have more of a conversation about kind of what you've been experiencing.
Yeah, I've got other experience that I haven't told you about. I'd love to come back and do great. Maybe tell you a few more.
Welcome. Maybe we'll join you on one day.
I've left out about the village that I lived in, which was, I think Pluckley was.
If you want to, we can do that. No, totally. No, thank you for taking the time, Phil. I really appreciate it, and thank you, Christine, as always.
And thanks for having me on. It's been great.
I appreciate it,
Phil. Thank you very much.
That was a wonderful conversation. Yeah, we're quite a new podcast still. We're still growing, and but our message is gradually getting out there anyway. And
cool. I'll share some of your stuff on TikTok for you.
Bless you. Appreciate it. You guys have a fantastic evening, and we'll catch up again soon. And I'll share you my story, Phil, and Christine as well, I can imagine, after this call. And like I say, we've had very similar experiences to you.
Okay, great.
You guys take care.
Okay, take care. Okay,
bye-bye.